This video is brought to you by Miniature Market. Thousands of board games, discounted prices, miniaturemarket.com.
Hello my friends, it's the Game Boy Geek here, and today we find ourselves in the period of a civil war. The oppressive galactic empire tightens its hold on the galaxy, wielding overwhelming military might with unmatched relentlessness. Standing in its way are the heroic soldiers of the Rebel Alliance, striking from hidden bases to resist the evil empire. It's a desperate struggle in which every battle could mean the difference between victory and defeat. Star Wars Legion is a miniature game, and I'm gonna showcase some of those miniatures and then show you the basic learning version of the game and what you can add to it to make it a standard game. So here we go. Now before I get into the gameplay, I want to showcase you the components of this game, the miniatures, the vehicles, so enjoy. Star Wars Legion comes with a learning battle, which has a specific setup that looks just like this, and some very basic rules, and then there's some advanced or expanded rule sets that we'll briefly cover afterwards. So here we have all the rebels set up in specific spots. Luke's here. We have some rebel trooper unit here. We also have some barricades set up, and then over there we have some stormtroopers. We have Vader way over there. Now the game is played over 6 rounds, and you'll count the rounds using this counter, and the teams have different units. Even though this is 5 figures, this is considered 1 unit. Here is the leader, and then all the rest of them, so this is considered a unit. Now if you destroy all of the units from the other player, you win before the end of the 6th round. Otherwise, you'll get a point for each one of these full units that you destroy from the other player, and whoever has destroyed the most at the end of the 6 rounds has won if someone didn't win the other way. Now the game is played over 2 main phases, the command phase and the action phase. During the command phase and the learning game, each of the different players have 4 of the identical cards. So both the Rebels and the Imperial have the same exact cards, and you're going to secretly select one of these and play it face down during that command phase. Now an interesting thing is, once someone has selected a card, they'll place it face down, so will the other player. They'll both flip them up simultaneously, and you'll look for an initiative. Initiative is the lower number pip in the upper left. For example, ambush is great because you know you're going to have the initiative and be able to go first, but you'll only be able to move 1 unit. Where, the assault, it's a little bit higher in initiative, you probably won't go first, but you'll be able to move 3 units, and so on and so forth. And that's how basically doing the command phase works. And if it's tied for initiative, you roll a die to see who has the initiative for that round. Now the player with initiative will start issuing orders. They'll issue an order, and then the other player will, and back and forth till both players are out of orders, depending on how many units they're able to activate this turn. And when orders are issued, you'll see each of these different troops units have different types of ranks. So for example, this is called Corps. It's a triangle. And Luke is the commander. And this is a support unit. So what you'll do is, when it's your turn to initiate or issue an order, you'll take one of your order tokens that has your side on it, and you'll place it next to the leader with the corresponding unit in that unit's type. So I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to be issuing an order to this unit. And then the other player would do the same thing, and then you go back and forth. Let's say I wanted to issue an order here, and let's say I was able to do 2 units that turn, and I'll issue an order there. Then we go to the activation phase. Now since it's actually your friendly commander, in this case Luke, issuing the orders, any unit that they're issuing orders to has to be within at least 3 of these ranges. This is 1, 2, 3, and everything is within 3 range so that Luke can issue orders to these units. Now the player that has the initiative will then go to the activation phase, choose a unit, and activate that unit. Now they can choose one of the ones that they've issued an order to, or if they'd like, they could take and randomize the other tokens that they have and randomly pick one, and they can now activate this one. This is normally used when somebody else has done something on their turn that you didn't expect, or now you'd want to change your mind. You can try to kind of change your mind there and issue orders something that you did not intend to at the beginning of the turn. So let's say we do this. We're going to activate this, and we're going to there's only 4 actions you can do in the learning game, and one of them is move. Now each of the units has a speed. It's these little red lights here. This is 2, 2, 2. So all 3 of those can only move up to 2. Now there's actually 3 different measuring tools here. There's a 1, a 2, and a 3. Since we can move up to 2, we can use the 2 and try to move. And what you do is you place this right up against the leader of the unit you're moving, and then you can use this and you can actually swivel it around and say, okay, I want them to move right there. So you would move this leader here, and then once they're moved, you then bring all of the other units from that leader with it. And to do this, you make sure that each of your units are within 1 of that leader. This is called unit cohesion. This is a really cool idea here, where you're only moving the leader, but then all the other pieces of that unit, because this is considered 1 unit, goes within 1 distance of that leader, and that's 1 move. You could move again. You always get 2 actions during the action phase, and move is something that you could do twice if you wanted to. So I could move again if I wanted to. Now normally you'd take your second action with that other unit first, but I just want to show you as moving. Anytime a vehicle moves like this, it then has to be placed right towards the end of that little indentation. And the way they face is important because you'll notice there's little lines here like this. Whatever way it's facing, this is the arc in which they'll be able to shoot if they have a front firing weapon like this one does. Another thing you could do instead of moving is attack. And to attack, you look at where your leader is and you measure, depending on what type of attack they're doing, to the closest miniature from the unit you're trying to attack. Now this is the leader. They're all behind a barricade, which can give you some cover and some defense, but this one's out here and is pretty close to our leader. Now when you attack, there's two different types. There's a melee and then there's a ranged attack. This tells you how far you can attack from. This is a 1 all the way up to a big 3, and you'll attack with 1 black attack die, where if your melee attack, meaning your base is touching the base of another enemy, you'd get 1 as well. And these differ quite a bit. Like for example, Luke Skywalker, wow, if he's hitting you with the lightsaber really close, he's getting a ton of black dies, but he could also use a blaster pistol from a range of 1 to 2 with 2 red die, for example. Now this one has range 1 to 3, and you can see the leader can touch at least the closest unit of that unit, so it can attack this unit. And so what's going to happen is you're going to get a certain amount of dice for each of the people in your unit. So this one has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So each player is going to get 1 black die. So that's 5 total black dice. This unit's going to get to roll when they attack against this unit. So let's say this troop was getting ready to roll the 5 black dice. Now the game only comes with a certain amount of dice. This is one of the big negatives in the game. There's only 3 black dice. So I'd have to roll 3 of them. If they're hits, I'd have to remember their hits and roll a couple more because there's 5 units there. It's one of the bad things about the game. However, you could have hits, you could have critical hits, which looks like this, and you can have this special icon, which sometimes allows you to flip it to something else depending on your card. For example, if Luke rolled that, it immediately becomes a hit. So those 3 different things can happen. You also could miss with a blank and something like that. So after that's done, you're going to see how many hits you possibly have. And the defender has some things they can do. They can try to dodge or have cover from the different barricades. And then the attacker might be able to change dice with different abilities, different cards, and things like that. But then the defensive team would roll dice. Now the type of die they'd roll is going to be on that unit's thing. Here it's a red defensive die. And they're going to roll 1 for each of the possible hits, so 2 red dice. And so let's say they roll and they have 1 shield. This basically blocks this attack here, right there. So there's just 1 attack that hit. But the defense also might have some cards or abilities that might allow them to change the dice as well. And since one of these are getting killed, this player gets to decide which one dies. And they're going to say this one because they don't want this player to maybe be able to attack them again on a subsequent turn. Now the reason why they died with 1 hit is because they only have 1 health. Now if you were hitting a unit that had more than 1 health, like Darth Vader has 8. So if we had hit Darth Vader 1, they would get a wound token, and he'll continue going until he has 8 wounds, and then he'll die. But these are weak, and so are these rebel troopers. They get hit once and they're gone each. Now we talked about moving and attacking. The other 2 things you can do is aim, and you put that near the leader of that unit. And then when rolling attack dice, you can spend this to re-roll up to 2 attack die, but these do go away at the end of the round. And the defense can also have used maybe a dodge token that they used on their turn. When they're getting attacked, they can essentially cancel 1 hit by getting rid of the dodge token. So those are the 4 things you can do: aim, dodge, move, and attack in the very basic learning game. Once each player has activated all their units and done 2 actions, and move is the only action you can do twice. Attack, aim, and dodge you can only do once for each unit that you're activating. Then you go to the next round, and you'd start this all over again. Now there's different terrain. The barricades are the only one that comes in the whole base box, but they add what's called heavy cover, which can cancel up to 2 hit results if you're trying to go through those barricades. And there's certain things of line of sight of whether half or more of the guys can be seen past the barricade and things like that that come into play. Now I'm going to move on to some of the expanded rule sets. I'm not going to go over everything in detail, but there's new command cards that come into play. So you'll have 7 in your hand instead of just the 4 in the very learn game. But there's new cards for the Luke side and the Vader side. I'm not going to go over these in detail, but you can pause it and read the cards here if you'd like. Now there's different deployment cards which will show you which side will deploy in which area, and how many troops will be deployed in these different ranges. It just gives you a different type of setup and 4 different ways to do that. Then there's objective cards. There's 4 different ones, which basically give you different setup and different ways, different things that you're trying to do in the game to win the game. For example, here you're putting on objective tokens, and at the end of the game, each player gains a victory point for each of the objective tokens that's there, and different ways to play the game, and this really changes it up a lot. You can pause here to read all these if you like. There's also 4 different condition cards which can change different things and rules throughout the game. Again, I'm not going to go over these in details, but there are 4 of these. So you can play with deployments, with objectives, and with these different conditions that will change the game up when you play. Now when selecting those different cards, there's a certain kind of a drafting way where people can eliminate which cards are possibly played that round. So a different way of selecting those cards. But then there's also a standard battle setup diagram in the rules that shows you how to do it with a full army, but you must know that this cannot even be made with the base box. You actually need either 2 sets of the base box. There's also ways to do standard battles if you get expansions, but the single base box that this review is for, you cannot even play a standard battle setup because they take a certain amount of army points in order to build your army, and those are going to depend on the number in the upper left-hand corner. You're trying to play, I believe, to about 800 points, but there's not enough units to play a full game here. Now, the expanded rule set also adds upgrades, and for each of your units, you get to pick one of the upgrade cards that has that icon on it and add it as it says. So this one, for this one here, we could add maybe this Stormtrooper or this Stormtrooper, and you take the minis and add them, and they have different attacking, different abilities, and it adds a lot of flavor to the game. And then you look at Darth Vader, and he has 3 of these, so he could add a Force Choke, maybe a Force Push, maybe a Force Reflexes, so that's sort of how the upgrades work. There's a couple other things that I'm not going to go over in great detail, but vehicles have resilience, and once you have it damaged that much, bad things start happening, like the weapons are damaged, or it can't move as fast, and things like that. And there's also courage for these units, and you can get these suppression tokens as you're getting hit with ranged attacks, and if that number of those tokens equals your courage, then you get 1 less action for that unit, things like that. But there's a lot of other things that go on in the game. All right, well, there is Star Wars Legion. Now, I'm going to come at this review from the perspective of a couple of things. Number one, I'm mainly a board gamer. I'm not mainly a miniatures game. In fact, I don't play a whole lot of miniatures game. So this perspective is going to be coming from people who mostly play board games but want to check this thing out. Also, from the intellectual property of Star Wars, my perspective is I like Star Wars. I've seen all of the movies, most of them just once. I don't dislike it. I enjoy them, but I'm not a Star Wars nut. So with that perspective is what I'm coming through. So the first positive thing is a strong IP. Of course, this has Star Wars written all over it. You've got Darth Vader, Luke Skywalker, everything that people that love that IP are gonna like. So obviously a big positive here is the IP. Now another one is the simple mechanism. So even though there's a lot going on and can be going on in this game, the basic mechanisms are very simple. I mean, even in the learning game, you're literally just moving, attacking, aiming, or dodging. And so it's actually a pretty simple game mechanically from the learning game. We'll get into some of the more advanced things later, but I like how it's pretty simple, and it's easy to learn, and it's not like a big rules teach, at least for the learning game. Now, moving. Now, I like the idea of this because this brings a couple of interesting things in. So when you're moving, you get to sort of move that leader, and then you get to move all the other troops in that unit along with it, and then make sure it has cohesion your one away. And I think that's really cool because you're like moving the leader, and then you're just moving everybody else with it, and it makes it nice and streamlined and easy to learn. And I like the way that those units move because, you know, as not a mainly miniatures gamer, I didn't want to have a million rules. I wanted to just be able to move around, and I liked the way it did that. And as you move those, it's interesting how, you know, when people attack you, you have to, you know, if your leader can touch any one of the ones in those troops. So there is some strategy as to, hey, do I want to put them in front of the leader, or behind, or to the side? And it has a lot of play and strategy as to where you place them, maybe behind some cover, you know, things like that. So I liked the ease of movement, but yet the strategy that's still there with it. Another positive thing is the card play. So, you know, I'm a board and card game player, so I like card play, and this has that. So you're playing those cards for a few things. Number one, the initiative. And that's cool because, you know, it's like, hey, do I want to play something really powerful that's going to move 3 units, but not very fast, meaning I'll go second? Or do I want to play one like the ambush that has a initiative of 1? I'm going to go first, but I'm only going to get to move 1 unit, but maybe that's all I need that turn. Maybe because of where I'm at, I'm going to be able to move and attack with this 1 unit, and I'll be able to destroy a very important unit of theirs. And those cards also, you know, that talks about the different troop movements and the abilities on them. So I like that card play. Another thing is that, let's get now to the advanced or layers of the game, because from the basic game, it's like, yeah, you're moving around, you're attacking, maybe you're aiming and dodging, and it's pretty simple. Let me talk about the advanced game, and then I'll sort of wrap up my final thoughts. So from the advanced game, it definitely adds lots of layers of more interesting choices. And so there's definitely things that you can add or maybe not add, but as you start getting through and after you play that first learning battle, you're going to want to start adding a lot of these things in. First thing is basically adding the upgrade cards. Those add different weapons, they add new troops, they add new miniatures, and that's really cool too because, you know, as I showed you in the video, you know, if you're Darth Vader, you can have the the force push, the force, different cards that you can use. And then sometimes you can bring in those stronger stormtroopers or the stronger rebels, different things, different weapons. And that adds a lot to the variability of the game. Probably the most out of anything here is adding those. I would add those in right away after your first learning battle. Now the objectives. So these three things. So you have objectives, deployments, and conditions. And these are really important too, because those objectives, there's 4 different ones that you can choose, and it really just changes the game how it's gonna play. So, you might have different victory conditions, different ways to get points, and I really like that aspect of it. The conditions, again, they just sort of alter what's going on, what can happen, what might not happen, and again, giving it more variability. And then as you're setting up the deployment, where things are gonna go, how things are gonna be set up, and so you're basically using that drafting aspect to sort of like remove certain things to get it there. And that between those things, that's going to give you quite a bit of replayability with that. Now, more on the advanced game versus the base box in just a moment. So let me go through some of the negatives of this. Well, again, this is coming from the perspective of a board gamer who's trying out a miniatures game. For those that don't usually play miniatures games, you have to construct your own miniatures here. They come in baggies, and you basically have to put them together and glue them together and then glue them to the bases. I'm a beginner at this, so it took me a little over 2 hours to construct the whole game. Maybe some miniature veterans could do it faster, but I was doing it at a pretty good pace and it took me about 2 hours. So just know that if you're getting into this, you're gonna spend a few hours putting things together. My biggest main concern is there's not even enough dice for one player. In this game, it just comes with a certain amount of dice, and sometimes, like with Luke Skywalker, you're gonna be rolling those 5 black dice, or in some cases, you're gonna be rolling 5 black dice, and there's only 3 there. So it's like you have to roll dice, and if they're all hits, you kind of have to go, okay, I have 3 hits, let me roll another one. Oh, it's a hit, let me roll another one. Oh, I have 5 hits, and you have to keep track of this. And I don't like this. This is the biggest negative here. They did not add enough dice, even for just one player, which I guess I understand if there was not enough for both players, but not enough for one player. They're cutting corners there. The dice itself, you can get an extra pack at Miniature Market for about $12. So it's not the end of the world, but they should have included at least enough for one player to roll all the possible dice in the base set. Another big negative here, which I guess it is pretty common in these types of miniatures games, because at the price point it is, you're basically getting enough to try the game out to see if you like it. That's really what this is. So in the rules, they have this standard game, and there's not enough troops for the standard game. You use about 800 points to make a full balanced army, and there's not enough miniatures there to do that. So this box is just enough to play basically the learning game with some advanced rule sets. You can't even play a full military battle, but it should be enough for you to just at least feel out if you like the game, do you like the system, and then see if you're gonna buy. And when you buy something, you're probably gonna wanna buy a second base box like this, or you're gonna wanna buy a bunch of the expansions so that you can build up a full army. And so that's it. Now, from everything I see and know, that's pretty standard in this sort of this industry. And so in the end, if you're looking at just the base box, if all you have money for is the base box, I'm mainly a board gamer. The experience here was not full enough to make me want to get more into miniatures gaming. So it was fine. I liked the card play. I liked certain things, but it didn't win me over to the point where I'm like, wow, this was amazing. I want to start getting into my miniatures games. But if you know you like miniatures and you get into this and you just play this little thing here, then you'll know if you want to buy more. So for me, there's definitely some positives here, definitely some negatives coming from the board game, sort of board and card game. You've got board and card games built around sort of this miniatures thing. Like for example, Star Wars Destiny. Love that game. That is my style of game. You've got cards, you got tactical card play, timing, dice, and that game is amazing. This had the card play, but it's not nearly as interesting as, say, Star Wars Destiny. And it had the dice rolling, but again, I didn't think it was as nearly as interesting as Destiny. So those are my core mechanics that I love. So for me, Star Wars Destiny is a much better game for me. But if you like miniatures, this is a good one to try out, but just be warned of those negatives that I said, and that's Star Wars Legion.
This video was sponsored by Miniature Market's Review Corner. The Review Corner features podcasts, video, and written game reviews by gamers for gamers. Miniature Market, the online gaming superstore. Thousands of board games, discounted prices. Check them out at miniaturemarket.com.